Yay! We're live. I like how we were like paused like that for so long. That's shameful. I love it. So I'm super excited that you're on today. Okay, we were just a little bit before I hit the live button. We'll kill some time while people like shuffle in. So it's probably only Molly is watching right now.
Hey, Molly.
Hey y'all. So what is okay, so we were just talking about cooking a little tiny bit, and that you're starting to cook. Have you started to cook any unique foods during the pandemic that you didn't used to cook and now are kind of like or like some type of pickup, or like what is any changes in food habits?
So, since I was mostly in Memphis for the pandemic, I really started like my southern roots. I was cooking a lot of like collard greens, and beans and rice and like um, Creole foods, which like blew my mind. I was like, all of a sudden, those things I hadn't made a lot at all, and let
Yeah.
alone some Creole dish, beans and rice, and some gumbo. All of a sudden, it's like, because my grandfather on my dad's side is from Louisiana. I think all of a sudden, it's like things just start coming where I start cooking all types of
Yeah.
before. So that was pretty cool. I probably cooked more in the pandemic than I did ever in the 18 years of being married. And so there's been that. As I said to you, I just got back to cooking and our refrigerator is full. So at least every week, I'm making the best French toast ever, the brioche bread. It is the best ever.
I
Um,
love French toast so much. I've never made it with brioche bread, but my sister-in-law makes it with brioche, and like it's like, why is this bread so tasty?
right. And put a little honey in it. I don't know if she puts honey in it, but put a little honey in it. That's sort of the key secret as well.
Oh, that's a hot tip.
Yeah.
Okay, people have had their time to shuffle in, and so I'll officially kick us off. So, hey, y'all, everybody. Welcome to the Cackle. This is Entry Point's weekly interview series where we highlight small businesses, startups, and people that are having an impact on our community. I'm super pumped today because we're talking about creating economic growth in the local business communities. And if you have questions, just a quick reminder, you can like put them in the comments. We can see them. And like we'll try to get to any questions, or if you just have like resources or shout outs or something you want to say hi to Regina, do that too. So joining us today is Regina Ann Campbell, and she is the president and CEO of Build Institute. Hey yo, how are you?
I am doing great, Emily.
So excited. I've been like, I've said this to you before, but I've been low-key stalking you for a little while. Like ever since like one of my neighbors was like, I think Regina is coming back to Michigan. And I was like, and then I started on
Thanks,
the,
Amy.
yeah, and then I was like texting Marlon, who always seems to know everything. Like I'll just be like, Marlon, do you know what's happening with this? So okay, the reason why I also like super wanted to have you on, I'm super interested in your background, and I was just reading on your LinkedIn profile and I feel like this kind of encapsulates. I was like, man, why didn't I like pull this earlier? So it says you care about economic development of urban communities because you're a member of the community, and your work and the organizations you lead are a reflection of what you value. So vibrant communities, access to resources, and creating opportunities. And I love that. I feel like it's such like a wholesome, like authentic way of doing economic development. So it'd be great to sort of hear a little bit about your background and your economic development journey.
Certainly, Emily. I will say you described sort of my overview in LinkedIn exactly because I feel like I embody that not only professionally, right, but when I go out in the community, I sort of take off my um, work hat that I am about vibrant communities, engaging and access and making connections and sort of the day to day of who I am. And so, talk about economic development. So I always say that I was economic development and urban planner long before I knew what it was. I shared this story about when I was 16 years old. I was at Grand River near Greenfield to take the bus downtown and meet my father and sort of treat him for lunch. I was this teenager, I had a job,
Oh
and
man.
my dad loved Nikki's Pizza. And at that time, he worked at Frank Murphy's court. And I said, I'm going to meet him down there and take him to Nikki's Pizza. And I was waiting forever on the bus. And while I was waiting on the bus, I, for the first time, noticed how there were stores on the commercial district on Grand River that were no longer there.
Hmm.
And in that moment, it really just bothered me because I could, in that moment, also reflect on when there was vibrancy, there was grocery stores in the neighborhood that my siblings and I would walk to. There was retail. I worked in some retail stores as a teenager down. And then just going downtown and just the vibrancy and in that moment, I said, self, you're going to help revitalize Detroit. I really didn't know what that meant, but I really was very interested in how can I help support economic development from a small business lens in my career. And so over time, you might as well say primarily when I got out of undergrad and had my first job at Vista Maria, sort of working in community there, I came across like Sheila Cackle and some others and Colin Hubble, folks who were urban planners and got to understand what that was and what it pertained to economic development. And so I immediately started getting on that path of having this community planning, economic development desire. And after working in policy and coming across people who were having challenges with having lifestyle businesses, I was like, well, I'm gonna go back and get a master's in urban planning from Michigan. And sort of got my first stint, you might as well say, in community development and housing development. So I used to do housing development as my first stint into the space and came across, it was Bagley Housing Association then, and they were doing some small economic development, sort of social enterprise work with having housing for I mean, it was like returning citizens and veterans. And I started saying, well, what is this economic development thing? And just to move a little bit forward, what really got me my foot wet, and I realized that yes, I'm in love with this, and I want to do more of it, was when I was a Detroit Revitalization Fellow, the first cohort. Had an opportunity to get into economic development and start working with Vanguard CDC to launch a small business incubator. It was in that moment where I start to work with local entrepreneurs, work with Steve Tabachman and them at Global Detroit around Prosper Us. We did pop-ups right where the Real Foods and Foundation is now. We had like
that's awesome.
in the Rainbow, had retail pop-ups, and I absolutely fell in love with economic development. And it was the first time in my career, quite frankly, where I was able to sort of take that 16-year-old girl, revitalize Detroit, and start working with small businesses. And that led to sort of post-fellowship, an opportunity at Techtown, Detroit to begin to launch what was called place-based entrepreneurship, which is neighborhood,
yeah,
brick and mortar businesses. It was the first time that Techtown started going into neighborhood and actually helping sort of these small business, micro businesses launch and scale. And I had an opportunity from the very beginning helping build SWAT City and Retail Boot Camp with an amazing team there who have gone on. Some have gone on to do some great things in economic development. Some have started their own businesses. And Amy Rich is still there doing some tremendous, great work with small businesses. And then guess what? Even further in economic development, the amazing Leslie Lynn Smith recruited me to Memphis, Tennessee to help support her with the entrepreneurial movement, launching Epicenter, which is like the New Economy Initiative. I adore New Economy Initiative for all that they've done to help establish our entrepreneurial resources for the Detroit region. We would not be here. I would not be here if it wasn't for the New Economy Initiative. So off to Epicenter, Memphis, I went as the chief program officer, and it was really great to help in building an ecosystem to support community-based businesses. Primarily there and here, I want to do some community-based capital programs. There is significant gaps, particularly for small business owners from ideation to looking to scale that are non-tech or high growth,
Mhm.
there is capital in the market, but it doesn't necessarily meet certain creatives. And I know in Memphis we had some musicians as well. There's a variety of entrepreneurs in the market that are untapped and capital isn't available. So we did a lot of that in Memphis.
Yeah.
Additionally, bringing in programs that would help them from an educational perspective to help them launch or grow their business. And so that was exciting and fun. As
Yeah, I really like touching on something that you had kind of said earlier is I do feel like economic development in a way is like it's like a lot of jargon and people say like economic development. I'm like, what? Like I remember when I first heard about it, I was like an economist or like what is that? And then like, but you do see like when you're kind of in the like entrepreneurial ecosystem that like it's all about kind of supporting entrepreneurs and supporting people that are trying to start and grow their businesses. And it has like a really like positive feel about it where you're kind of like, I used to be an auditor and I felt like every time I went in to like, I'd be like, and here's another thing you did wrong. And they'd be like, we actually, as it turns out, hate you. But you come in and you like, I feel like economic developers, it's like you get a chance to be like a cheerleader for people who are like, launching businesses and, hiring other people and like
Yep.
making a difference in their communities and stuff. And I'm like, damn, this is great. Like, I love a thing like that.
So the cool thing about economic development, and it was actually planning school at Michigan that taught me clearly what economic development was. So to your point, I understand when people hear like economic development, sort of urban planning, like what is that? I remember when I told people I'm going back to get my master's in urban and regional planning with a focus on housing, community, and economic development. They're like, what is that? And some of the brightest people were like, what is that? uh,
Yeah.
but again, economic development, the basis for that is about local economies and business. It just is because we know that um, communities, tax bases, everything sort of starts from, this economic small business place where people are having jobs, able to have income to support goods and services. And so that helps bring tax bases to, having schools and a variety of different things. And so that's why we start as far as economic development from a business perspective. And
Yeah.
now, where people used to say, what is economic development? What is this? I'm like, the past 6 years to be an economic developer in the market is a great thing. So,
Yeah, that is true. I feel like there is like a lot of, and especially like right now, it's like that having someone that's really knowledgeable about how to put together a program or to address like supporting small businesses and things like during the pandemic and stuff is like so valuable to a community. Um, so I guess what would your what strategy should economic development organizations kind of take to build healthier uh, business communities?
so first, I'm going to start with, of course, is build. With April being the founder, she's an entrepreneur, so it's like by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, and we also say with entrepreneurs. And by that we mean we listen to the voice of entrepreneurs, what it is that they need, what are they looking for in the
Mhm.
market to support them with launching and scaling, right? And so we hear their voices, so that's important. Additionally, since it's been COVID and other experiences, collaboration is key. We have to collaborate with other organizations. One, build. We're strong at what we do. We do it really well. Education, hands down. We provide from the best education and ability for entrepreneurs to do proof of concept, access to capital
Mhm.
customers. But we don't do everything, nor can we do everything.
Yeah, yeah,
So we're collaborative and we partner with others who have strengths in other programming in the ecosystem. And so we need the system to work well with referrals and connecting with leveraging our resources so that we're not pulling the entrepreneurs here and there. For us, we always like say the entrepreneurs at the center, like this bottle of water. Let's just say if it was a table, it's at the center.
yeah,
And so for us, we do not want the entrepreneur getting pulled left and right in that sort of competitive kind of market. One, we're a nonprofit. And so we really want to be about the business of a one-stop shop so that the entrepreneur can get anything that they need in the Detroit region. Um, so there's that. I think people will, because of COVID, going to have to take time to look on the inside out, really go slow to go fast. Sarah Donnelly used to always say to us at Tech Town, go slow to go fast. People are going to have to really step back and see what it is that they do well and what they can offer as a niche to the entrepreneurs who need it versus what is happening right now in the market. People are being very duplicative. And that's really self-defeating against the established system that we've worked years for and what New Economy Initiative has done. So people have to take time to go through the strategic planning process. I recommend to figure out what is their path for the next 3 to 5 years. We tell our businesses, quite frankly, to sort of do the market research, right? To do some validation, customer validation, all of that. As nonprofits, as organizations, economic development leaders, we need to also do the same. And then come back together around, hey, Bill does this great, other organizations do this, and focus on the entrepreneur sort of pipeline to growth. And so I think there's some initial work that needs to be done, and we're doing ours now.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that because it does seem like when it should be entrepreneur focused. And I think there does tend to be like some amount of like ego in doing like as if they're like, oh, I know what's best for building the community versus like what's best for supporting people who are building the community. Like the entrepreneurs are the ones that are building the businesses and that's where everyone works and those kinds of things. So it's like, I do feel like when you like actually are going back to the entrepreneurs to be like, did this help you? And like, what do you need and what are your needs? And then supplying them with those specific things versus being like, well, I just know what everybody needs. Like, I feel like that is like such a better way to like just be carefully picking your way forward and helping businesses. And so like, I guess as Detroit's sort of like, I guess, I don't know, I say like Detroit's at an inflection point, but I feel like Detroit's kind of just constantly evolving for like 100 million years now. So Detroit's kind of, I do think at some point of an inflection point right now. And it's changed a bit from when you left 3 years ago till now. So what is your approach for kind of stepping back into this community and your economic development role as it pertains to Detroit specifically?
So to me, relationships are important. Relationships. And so for me, it's really been about reestablishing connections and relationships while making new relationships in community. And so one thing I've been very fortunate about, just like how you and I are first time meeting, I'm like, I heard your name before. I heard about Entry Point. I've been afforded the opportunity with returning to Detroit to meet some new, great, amazing people, which I've been building those relationships. Because the one thing was in Memphis that I had, there almost 3 years, was the value of long-standing relationships, so that when Memphis went through challenges, whether there was economic downturns or civil unrest, you had people across religion and ethnicities really heartfelt caring for one another. And so at the core of who I am and who we are at Build Relationships First, and that's how I've been moving into back into the space. I'm also one who, even Leslie was always saying, I'm just a quick study. And so I always read and reevaluate what is going on in the marketplace today. There has naturally been a lot of continued real estate development. I'm a social enterprise person with a real estate company in Memphis. I'm looking at what's in the marketplace, who are the stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, I'm not necessarily always talking about sort of who's investing capital in Detroit as much as folks who are in community who have voice. That may not be a financial transaction, but matter. So you might as well say the planner in me is looking at a whole holistic perspective of the present day Detroit and how do we collaborate in it and fit in it and support what is happening here while bringing our entrepreneurs into the room. I do know that there is a place here for us to do like we did in Memphis, advocacy, quite frankly. I don't think as nonprofits, we have been very engaged in advocacy of bringing voices into every room. In Memphis, we were in the rooms with, the city government, with the county government, with the state legislators, again, bringing voice into the room around advocacy. And in this current market, organizations, we need to do that. And so I'll be showing up in the rooms, bringing in the voice of entrepreneurs so that policy can also inform our practices and resource for us.
Yeah, I love that.
So again, day to day for me, I'm on this, this first 100 days of learning and relearning Detroit, hearing entrepreneurs what matter, the gaps that they've expressed about access, and lack of places that they feel inclusive and welcomed. And so I'm taking in everything. You might as well say I'm like this new student in the class, taking all things in while our team and I will be working on a strategic plan. We just started that. That will help us.
It's a big process.
Yeah.
Especially during a pandemic when you're like, but also do that from more than 6 feet away from me. You're like, if we could just do all these things.
Right.
I really like what you said about advocacy too, and it makes me kind of think like, like you don't see a lot of like the voice of the small business community or the voice of like entrepreneurs like in the room at a lot of these like policy makers, like doing those kinds of things. And like it's just crazy because it's like small businesses make up 90% of the businesses. Like 90% of all businesses have less than 25 employees. Yeah. So it's like, and it's like at least half of the people at least half the people in the country work at a small business, and small business owners make their own jobs. So it's like, it's just crazy to me that like more, like that policymakers don't seem to have as good of a picture of what's going on in the small business community and like a, entrepreneur first type attitude. But I could go on and on.
You can't outsource local small businesses. That's another thing too. There's some uniqueness about small business, local businesses. You can't outsource them. They're local. They're the jobs. They are ones that when sort of big business wants to downsize, they still existing. And quite frankly, they're the job providers for the local residents, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the key things that I remember being that 16-year-old. I worked in a retail store in the corridor. You saw neighborhood people with jobs in the community. And so that's the job creation. So for me, economic development is really about how do we create those jobs in neighborhoods.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that's so good. And it's like small business owners are just too busy to kind of do that type of advocacy. So it's like so good that you're going to be able to kind of like be that voice in those rooms for everybody. I'll lead the charge for us.
I'll do my best. I can't share it'll be welcome, but I'm definitely one who will.
Yeah. And so let me see if I like my next question now. Every time I go like off topic, then all of a sudden I look back at the questions. I'm like, this isn't what we're talking about. What kind of interview is this? So I guess what do you think? And maybe the advocacy thing is the answer to this. Is what do you think needs to be done to see continued progress in the city's entrepreneurial ecosystem? I mean, there's so much stuff that's already happening, but kind of what do you think is like needed to like kind of continue that?
Well, Detroit has a great bench of thought leaders in this, right? So we have, the city and, Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. Their Detroit Means Business. You had a new economy initiative and all the 40 plus organizations who serve. You have the corporates in the room. So I think we have a strong bench of thought leaders, right? Some doing investments into the ecosystem, into entrepreneurs, which is really, really great. Mm-hmm. What I always say and what I have been saying is that our organization and other organizations need the same level of funding into organizations to do the work now and in the future, right? I think to peel back layers of investment to our organizations right now is such a critical point for entrepreneurs, especially because we're finding that many of them during COVID don't have an e-commerce platform, like an online platform, technology and things that are necessary today and forward for doing business.
Yeah,
right? So, we need to be able to cultivate and innovate with investment that will allow us to do that. So that's one. Um, and then two, there's so much at stake. When I say we got a great bench of thought leaders, we know so much more now. There's no reason why we can't come together and work collaboratively, having the entrepreneur in the center and leaving egos outside the door.
Mhm.
Um, I know, Emily, you'll find about me, you'll hear others say about me, it ain't about us getting the credit. Our celebration is when entrepreneurs benefit and reach what their goals are for their business. So I don't care who sort of shouts out it's them, but a bunch of egos get in the way of getting the work done, isn't effective or value add to entrepreneurs. And so um, us working together more in those rooms and getting to deliverables. Our
Yeah.
team is action. Many of us were like, okay, action. We talked about this. We talked about that. Okay,
Yeah.
action. Let's just get to action. Let's um, entrepreneurial. We are risk takers. We have to try things. We have to throw some things at the wall and see if they stick. And sometimes people get too caught in the conversation. So I'm hoping to push people forward to action. Let's
Yeah.
get to the action of things. And um, people will reference sort of these non-tech, non-high growth businesses as risky. Everything is a risk.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, you have to go through the bad to get to the good. And so people just got to be willing to take a risk. Lead their
That's
egos up.
funny that they would say like a small business was risky versus like that, like these non-tech businesses are risky versus like tech businesses. Cause I think a lot of times that's not the case. Like you see like small businesses who are like able to navigate their way through kind of like whatever they're offering, whether it's a restaurant or whatever, and they're kind of like continually navigating the ecosystem with their staff and like keeping themselves employed and things like
Yeah,
that.
it's keeping us happy, right? Because I always think about I can't eat tech. I mean, but I love, you know, clothes, hair, a variety of things we love. Those
Yeah.
services and goods that small business owners provide. And even during COVID, I'm like, I hope, I hope that community recognize that small businesses are essential. Retail is essential. Hair salons, nail salons, restaurants are essential
Mm-hmm.
um, to our community. They also, from my vantage point, another reason I love this work is small businesses are really the catalyst for rebuilding community. And I'll use the example of how it said sort of there's these two Detroits. If you think about the coffee shops or the restaurants that have opened, you're bringing together community who may live in the neighborhood but didn't know one another. So now they're starting to come together and have those conversations and recognize one another, sort of in like Rose's Fine Foods, right? I love the diversity that goes into their space. And then you have newcomers. So that blend of sort of talking about revitalizing community around relationship, it also happens with small business. So there's a number of things that when we talk about revitalizing the community, it is the small businesses that begin to generate that activity, build relationships where people are coming together in ways that they wouldn't have before, right? Um, and that's why for me, this whole thing is sort of a revitalization effort holistically. And small business has a lot of spillover into how we have a quality of life.
Yeah. I also like, I mean, like what you said earlier about like the needs of small businesses during the pandemic and like not having websites and things like that. I was like, I'll have to send you this like report that we're publishing on Monday.
Mm.
But I was like, teaser.
I can't wait.
That was not an intentional teaser. Anyway, I'll try to keep this short, but I feel like one of the things that we had studied, like, so we started doing this research in the beginning of the pandemic of just like what the impact of things have been on the small business community and kind of things that have fallen off because of like just factors that weren't really coming forward beforehand that kind of got buried because like everything was status quo. And then as soon as like the pandemic happened, all of a sudden it's like, wait, so like what? Like people aren't on the internet, like things like that. So
Yeah.
we it was a lot of the problem in the very beginning of the pandemic with businesses that like had months of downtime that weren't able to like, you know, figure out how to like continue operating and start making revenue again
Yeah.
was like the fact that they didn't have solid internet access, they didn't have websites, they didn't, you know, like all that e-commerce stuff
Yeah.
that like some businesses already had and were great at, and like then it could just
Mhm.
easily be like, well, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. It was like, so like what do we do? And
Mhm.
then the other thing that we noticed was then when like programs started coming out and you saw like PPP loans and things like that, people then were like, well, I don't have any banking relationships. Like what, I have to go to my bank, but like, I don't really even know those guys. And like, or don't have bank accounts. And then it was like, oh, so like you don't have a bank. So like, you just don't get this then. So then it's kind of like, and it was like continually similar, this is my hand movement, continually like similar subsets of businesses that were kind of getting like that double whammy of not having the website and then not having the banking relationship. And then it was just like, well, sorry about you. Um,
And
and
I
then,
and I would gander to say that some of that has to do with the solution was built in isolation. It wasn't built with the customer in mind, right?
yeah,
That's oftentimes what happens with you know, these ideas to help a small business with funding. You're not designing it with feedback or based on data and need from the entrepreneurs.
yeah. And then it's like, even then, it was like people needed financial resources, but they were like, really, if you can give me even like great marketing resources, like that was like, it was like, yeah, sure, I'll take some money. That would be great. Like who could, who wouldn't? But
Yeah.
like then it was like equal was like, can you encourage people to like shop locally and like come to our business? And like, can you provide me with any sort of like marketing support so I can like get my, you know, like actually just sell to the customer? And those were like almost even with like, can you give me a loan kind of thing. So I love that you were like are on the e-commerce and marketing support train. So I'm like, yeah, I got some data for
And,
you that you
and
can.
capital too, right? So one of the things that's important to us as a team um, is that we actually deliver on what we promise. And one key way in my experiences in the work that shows entrepreneurs that um, your word is bond, so to speak, is when you say they're going to get access to capital, when you say they'll walk away with a business plan, when you say they're going to be able to open or launch their business and grow their business, that there are tangible milestones that they can actually see and touch and point to, like, yes, that was worth my time having a conversation with
Mhm.
you, Regina, or whoever. Yes, it was worth me sitting in that class because I got to what I needed and I wanted. I think there's too much time is valuable. We don't get it back, right? And our entrepreneurs definitely time is a resource, and so that we have to provide them what we said. And capital is one of those things. I know uh, we would say at Tech Town and why the SWAT City and Retail Bootcamp was so successful was we didn't want to have a program that said, "Hey, here's a milestone plan. These are all the things you need to do. Now go find the capital to go and do it."
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, as an entrepreneur, sometimes you're like, okay, I already knew that, but you need capital, you need funding to be able to do it. And in this early stage piece, there's capital in the market, but there's still a miss on certain things. In Memphis at Epicenter, we had a family and friends fund, and it's just that. You know, not everybody has family and friends to go to get a certain amount of cash or investment. And it's really just it's a cash investment. Some people say grant. And so things like that that help people move forward and get past roadblocks because sometimes capital is the only thing that's going to get them to that next step.
Hmm.
Um, Strategy can take you so far, but sometimes you got to get some capital or some type of investment. And we know that the more people are in business, they can build those relationships to get traditional banking. And again, that's only in certain industries. So again, we've got to fill that capital gap because that's important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And that friends and family Fun sounds like a great idea. I'm sure that there's things I'm just like not thinking off the top of my head. Like there's like resources locally, but I do feel like that is like, I mean, people don't realize like how significant that is in the very, very beginning of like, if you need to like not take a paycheck in the beginning or something, because like some people can't do that. And then like, where do you get the money to like buy your equipment to begin with? And like, you can't just go to a bank when you don't have collateral. So like, it's like there's a lot of issues there for sure. So I'm gonna skip forward because I know we're like over time now. I keep
Why
going
are we?
like,
Time
ah!
flies when you're having fun.
I know. I was like looked at the clock and I was like, ah! I need like a timer next to the computer, which I would then ignore. So I guess talk a little bit about. Let me make sure. I hate to so we'll just touch on this really quick before we move on. So how do you feel like when you're you're coming back to Detroit, you know, seeing tons of progress in the region, and how can we kind of go about creating more opportunities in the region for Black people of color, women-owned businesses? I almost just skipped right over it, but I was like, no, we'll go back.
Definitely have to go out in community. Build trust, and you know, sometimes it means go to door. In my experience, it's been going door to door with businesses, going into churches, letting them know who we are, what we do as an ecosystem, um, and inviting them to the table. I don't think we can always expect people to come into, you know, sort of the ivory tower for a number of reasons. So being present in community and having strategies where we're continuing to have classes in community. And I know there's different spaces in community, so there's conversations around like how do we make sure that we collaborate as far as space so that when people go from east side, west side, southwest, wherever, they have an entrepreneurial place to go to. So that's one thing that I think will be supportive for us to have those different entrepreneurial hubs within communities so they can access the space. I think also Detroit does a really good job around the diversity of teams and a reflection. We reflect the city, which is a good thing as well, so people can see themselves in the room. So I think we need to continue doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's okay certainly for people to call out specific funds that are specific for, you know, Black businesses or women-owned businesses. I think we have to do that and continue to call it out. Detroit is known for its best practices, and we have to continue to lead in the nation by being able to call out where the gaps are and say what they are, give it a name, and build programs and resource around it. Um, and then finally, youth. I think oftentimes youth are left out of the conversation, and we know that you're never too young to start a business. We have to do more to make sure that our youth know that the ideas that they have can become businesses, you know. And so we've got to put that time in because some of these youth, they're working jobs, some of them are providing for their family. And entrepreneurship is a path to economic mobility, quite frankly. And so let's not leave our youth voices out of the room.
Yeah, I love that. And it is like getting that feedback from people and kind of like designing things not in a vacuum and like making sure like programs are like designed with that feedback in mind is like would be so valuable.
And then finally, if I could say too on the point of one thing that's important, we were doing Memphis. We realize entrepreneurs are a whole person, just like we are, you know, in our professional hats. So, you know, you have your skills and your talent, and then you have the health and well being. And a lot of times, organizations or programs don't address sort of the health and wellness piece. And so we'll continue to support that whole entrepreneur by helping them where they are with their health and wellness. And that does mean, as many of us have had like coaches, you know, executive coaches and a variety of things over time, that we have to look at those dimensions of health and wellness around emotion, around your financial life, around your spiritual life, or however you want to call it. But we're not just the things that we do. And so sometimes our businesses fail with, even though you're doing education or or capital, and people wonder why they're failing is because they're not helping the whole entrepreneur. Some entrepreneurs are struggling, right? There may be family matters, there may be health matters. And so for us to truly support them, we've got to work with the whole entrepreneur. Don't just expect that we can solve the challenges and pain points with capital and education. So
Yeah.
we'll be giving some health and wellness opportunities to support our entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I like that. So talk a little bit about Build Institute. You've touched on it, but so like you're like new to the role, but not new to the organization. I'm a big fan of Build Institute. So talk a little bit about what it is and well,
So I'm a big fan of Build Institute. I've been a big fan since April launched it in 2012. Build is known for helping people launch ideas into market and really helping people with proof of concept. So you have the pilot space where entrepreneurs are able to sell products there. And then we're working with Ask Jennifer, all things Detroit, where she's helping doing shipping and fulfillment for entrepreneurs. So help with ideas, help them test that concept so that they can be prepared to go off and launch business in a brick and mortar or e-commerce. We're very great at that, including Kiva. Kiva in Detroit was the first Kiva hub in the nation. And so we provide capital to our entrepreneurs, which is a very important, and then connecting them to customers. So you'll have virtual classes like Build Basics and then Rebuild and some master classes for our alumni. We have like over 2,000 alumni, which is exciting.
wow.
And that alumni group is very strong. There's some of them have done B2B. There's some of them who will post and get resource, like if they need a marketing person, and a very strong alumni that support one another. So we're proud about that.
Yeah.
We have an innovation hub in the corner, which is where the old Tiger Stadium was.
I haven't even been there yet. I'm so sad. It's like I didn't go there, and then the pandemic started, and then I was like, "Well, I guess I'll see it when it's old, the old building." And then,
Hopefully, we'll be able to do some things, teaser around spring when the weather is nice.
yeah, that would be so awesome. I love that. It looks like all the pictures. I was like, "Oh, I'm so excited to go to this new space, and it looks so great." And like, like we even put on our calendars like a recurring calendar appointment because there was like a free drop-in day, and then I was like, "Oh, we'll just go on every drop-in day and like be able to hang out there." And then it was like, "No, you won't." Cancel that calendar appointment and all the rest of them for a year. I was like, dang it.
So we're going to get back to in space at some point, and we're figuring it out. We can't wait because it is such a beautiful space, and it's actually where we know catalytic, relationships, entrepreneurs, and ideas can flourish. So we have our Build Basics for folks who have an idea and want to start a business and have a business plan. They walk away with an amazing business plan. We have opportunities to do proof of concept, as I said earlier, and then for us, supporting our alumni with Rebuild, which is a program that allows you to take a look at your business model. If you need to pivot, how do we help you with that? Or if you're looking to add new products or services to your business around scaling, Rebuild can help with that as well.
That's so great.
Cash flow is always important, right? Cash flow, nonprofit, for profit. It's important. And so we have a master's cash flow class that'll be coming up as well. So those are a few things that we're doing.
Yeah, awesome.
Social for our social entrepreneurs like myself. And so
I love that.
That's it.
Well, perfect. Should I ask you what's on the horizon for the next 5 years?
Ooh, well, that's such a big, beautiful question. Oh, wow. I love it. And it's still in my, Build will continue to be a place where people feel included, where there's access to programs, support, alumni rich network. It will be a place I like to think of colorful. And I say color in that I love bright colors, reds, blacks, greens, oranges, yellow, rainbow. So people can come in and be like, oh, wow, inspired. Almost like this this place that they can go in that feels sort of like a New Orleans. When you go to New Orleans feels like a place that you're like, oh, this is in the United States. And so that you can walk in, know that you're going to be served and meet whatever deliverable you want. You're going to be cared for in a way that treats you with dignity and respect. You may even want to ride a skateboard around the space. I don't know, but it will be a place that's fun, accessible, welcoming, have some of the best education to offer our entrepreneurs. That's why we're the Institute. If you come to us and there's a capital need and we're like, oh, we don't have that yet, we're committed to figuring out how to fill that gap with the amazing partners that are here in the region. And so diverse, inclusive, just beautiful.
I love it.
Fun. Let me just say fun. I'm a person who likes fun.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. That sounds awesome. I love it. Well, cool. Thank you so much for being on. I'm sorry I kept you for 15 minutes longer than I said I would.
No problem.
You're like, I hate you. I was going to tell people who our next guests were. I'm super excited for February. Guess who all the people are in the history. Jennifer Bradley is on next week. She is with the Aspen Institute. If you guys don't know the Aspen Institute. I was
the Aspen Institute fellow some years ago.
Oh, you were? That's so good. Yeah, it's like she's so good. So she started their Center for Urban Innovation. She actually built that portion of the Aspen Institute. And it's she has a wealth of knowledge. If anybody's ever participated in any of their fellowships or any of their roundtables or whatever, she's a great connector of people and supporter of the community. And then we have Aaron from 50 South Capital, who's awesome. And he runs a fund of funds. And so they invest in venture capital firm. And then Yalitza, who is, I don't know if I'm very nervous she's not going to even show because she's gotten so famous.
She's gonna show up.
I was I asked her way back in the day, and then I was like, oh god, she's getting really famous, maybe too famous. No, but we're gonna try to make it happen still. She has a great toy company. They have a doll, and I've bought a couple of them already to send to people. I'll just be oh, you should have one of these. They're winning literally every award in history, and their team is getting so big. So I'm super excited about that. So yeah, so February is I love that you kicked us off.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much, and then we'll see you guys all later.
Bye. I'll be staying tuned.
Yeah.